Greetings, and yes, it is time to talk about my main synth setup, at least in some form. To be honest, I'm really not sure how to even talk about this, where to start, what kind of depth this is going to go into. Probably not a whole lot of depth, but I would like to go over generally what I do with this and give a bit of a demonstration at the end of just sort of screwing around, making some tunes, or at least something with some sound. I just like cool sounds, and I like computers and technology and this kind of stuff. Synthesizers, man, drum machines, analog, digital coming together, that kind of thing. It is something that has highly appealed to me for a very long time, and this right here is a result of about a year or so of just screwing around with things. I'm not sure I'd call myself a musician, or whether or not this is even music that I make on here. I mean, it's something resembling. It's got beats and tunes and whatnot, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just ambient weirdness and very strange noises like this. Yeah, to be honest, I like ambient and I like making noise experimental weirdness, and there's that. But you know, sometimes I also like to put a beat to it and a little bit of a melody, definitely a bass line or two or three. So stuff like this. Yeah, sometimes I make things that sound like that, but then sometimes I make things that sound like this. And then other times I like making things that sound like this. So yeah, it's not always music that I like making on here. I just like experimenting with sounds and the various components here that all come together to make different, intriguing, audible noises that come together and does something in my brain that I really like. I don't know, my brain likes this. Anyway, what are we gonna do for this video? Man, I still don't know. I guess my main goal with this is to just describe what the heck I even do with it, and maybe get some expectations out of the way. Like, for one, I'm not releasing an album. I mean, maybe I will someday. I'd really like to. For now, it's just mostly trying to keep myself sane, learning new skills, having fun, screwing around, making cool sounds. And yeah, I suppose for this video here, let's just go ahead and dive into the main things and my main synth setup. And then once I'm done talking, we're gonna make some music or something resembling it. And just have some fun mixing around some things. Let's get to it. All right, so we're just going to begin chronologically in the relative order that I ended up getting these things for this whole setup. And really the device that kicked off this entire endeavor was the Korg Minilogue XD, the polyphonic analog synthesizer. And the reason that I really wanted to jump into something like this is because my goal, other than to just mess around and make cool sounds, was to go DAW-less. I didn't want any digital audio workstations, no computers in this whole setup. I wanted to go as analog as possible, but you know, with some digital effects and other things to, I don't know, save space and make life easier as needed. In a way, the Minilogue XD is kind of a hybrid synth, a lot of analog stuff, but some digital things too. The analog portion, you can see it's actually tuning the oscillators there. You got two VCOs that are analog. Those have to be tuned. They do go out of tune due to ambient temperature and other weird circuitry things happening. But yeah, it tunes itself automatically. You have a third oscillator of sorts, a multi-engine. That's interesting. And you can add on things to that through software if you want. I haven't really done much with that. I got fully digital effects. You got modulation, reverb, and delay. Digital LFO, but I think pretty much all this stuff, like the core sounds, are analog and they're awesome. Yeah, and that's just the first preset that it starts up with. That's another thing that kind of drew me to this, is because it does have a lot of presets built in. You know, if you're going with a pure analog synth, chances are you gotta do it all yourself. And I did want to do it all myself. Really, the appeal was just not having to mess with any software stuff. I don't want keyboard and mouse. I'm just really tired of that. You know, FL Studio and Ableton and even Propellerhead stuff back in the day. Like almost 20 years I've been screwing around with just software synths. So it was really refreshing to go nice and hands-on with everything. But because of the preset, one of the downsides is every time that you change it, you're getting completely different settings that it's loading in the background. And then all of a sudden, none of these knobs match up what's actually going on. So it kind of made it a little tricky to learn. I was like, okay, I want to recreate that sound. I can see it with the handy little oscilloscope there, but how am I doing it? Like I said, because you're loading presets, it kind of switches everything around. So if you do shift play, now it's just loaded whatever the panel is set to physically. So now I can see precisely what the sound is through the switches and knobs. Totally different sound to what it was earlier, but it's a nice one-to-one representation of what's going on here. So now all the switches and knobs and things will interact immediately with the sound, and it's not going to like play catch up. There we go. Classic analog stuff with enough digital mixed in, you know. I love all the effects that are in here, because at the time when I got this, it didn't have any effects units or anything. So you can add some really cool like plate reverb digitally, but still. And of course it's got a 16-step sequencer here, so that's cool. I can't really play piano myself, so nice to have a sequencer. Yeah. And you can just put things in, of course, on your own. All right, there's a million more things I could say about this, but let's move on to some drums. Okay, so in terms of drum machine grooveboxy type things, the first one I ended up going with was this Roland Rhythm Performer TR-8S. I really like this thing, even though there's not a lick of analog going on, as far as I know anyway. It's all like digital sample based, but there are a lot of classic analog inspired things in there in terms of the drum sets that it comes with. You know, your vintage Roland things, 909, 808, 707, 606. Tons of presets and patterns and whatnot, but of course, it's just fun to make your own. Mix up the drum sets and samples and sounds, and if you want to add more, you can. You've got that little thingy over here to do that. And an SD card slot in the back to put in your own samples. It's a pain to import them, honestly, so don't do it too much. But, you know, lots of good stuff already included. Anyway. And a lot of really fun performance options, which is honestly one of the bigger reasons that I went for this. And of course, just a bunch of fun to really create your own drum kits, stick your own samples in there, just mess with the ones that are in there, and switch around each individual instrument and, you know, make cool things happen. I also really like all the different trigger outs in the back, so you have more individual control over sending out some different patterns and creating things on here. Again, millions of things you can go into, but we gotta move on, man. We gotta move on. Right, so on to something a little less fascinating, but nonetheless pretty important. So now that I had a couple of things going, I was just actually sending the Roland and the Korg through just some like random splitter cables and into some old speakers that I had lying around. Wasn't ideal, needed a mixer, so this was the one that I grabbed up. Grabbed up? Is that I don't care. Anyway, Mackie Pro FX 10V3, 10 channel thingy with all sorts of goodies. I like the fact that it has a lot of these effects, but I'm just not the biggest fan of the way it does stuff. You can't assign them to individual channels. I wish you could. And I know you got some FX Send stuff and some other ways to blend that, but you know what? There's better options out there for what I would like to do. However, I was really attracted to the individual mute buttons for everything and EQ and all that. Let me just bring in some sound. Okay. So there's a Roland drum machine just doing its thing over there with a bit of sampled bass line. So yeah, individual level controls. Mute button, really handy for the whole performance aspect. I love quickly muting and unmuting things to sort of mix on the fly. Left and right stereo panning, effects right here. And then of course some really basic EQ, but it's nice that it's on every single channel. So bass, midtones, highs, good stuff. You got some really simple compression on the first two channels there, a bunch of XLR inputs, 1/4 inch stuff for mono and stereo, balanced, unbalanced kind of things. I only ever have like 4 things plugged in here at once, but occasionally I'll get more. I just don't have a lot of space in this corner. If I did, I'd have every single input filled up, but I don't. Anyway. Oh yeah, another thing that I have going over here is different outputs to different things like speakers, for instance. The main speakers that I've gone with are the KRK Rockets, or really I think they're just called the KRK Classic 5s in this respect. I don't know. It's some re-release of them that came out in late 2019, I believe. Anyway, lovely speakers. They sound great. I mean, I know it doesn't matter that you can hear them or not right now because you're listening to a recording, a microphone, and a YouTube video, but so it goes. However, you know what you really can hear? The subwoofer. This is ridiculously huge, overpowered Samson down there. It's a ridiculous thing, absolutely. Don't need it, but you know, I like that it's there. Sometimes you just want a little extra punch and you want to blow out some windows. I have knocked over so many lamps and bits of furniture using that. Anyway, and of course, headphone amp and some mixer stuff. It's cool, but I'll probably be replacing this at some point because I'd like to have something that also does, more effects control, like over individual channels, but also just recording on the same unit because I'm trying to go without computers. If I could eliminate that part of it as well, just getting it all recorded on the fly. I know some of them with Zoom, the Zoom mixers with recorders built in. They look really appealing. Anyway, whatever. This is the one I got right now. Okay, so the next stop on my Synthy setup journey was getting a central audio rack going. And that is this big thing right in the middle here, which is just housed in a pretty cost-effective StarTech 12U rack. It's just metal with holes in it, really. Standard 19-inch rack mount type of thing, and yeah, it holds 12 units worth of stuff. And we'll just go from top to bottom, starting at the top here, which is actually above the rack. It's just a LaMetric smart clock. And it connects to your phone or other smart device and runs all kinds of apps. Right now, at the moment, I just have it displaying like time and calendar. Not connected to the audio rack in any way, just it looks cool and it's sitting here. Next up, I have this Yamaha pedal. This is just for turning on and off certain effects that I have it plugged into. We'll get to that in a sec. And then down below that, yeah, here is the actual first unit in the rack. And this is just a simple power switcher, which I got mainly because of these switches that are nice and clicky and they light up. It's pretty similar to the one I used in my MIDI rack mountain case in that video. You might have seen that on LGR in the past. Yeah, it doesn't do any kind of power conditioning or anything. I actually do have it plugged into a Furman power conditioner unit, before it gets plugged into the wall itself. Down below this though, this is something that I was thinking I would use more than I am using it, but it's still cool, so I'll leave it in there. This is a Roland A880 vintage MIDI patcher slash mixer. So you've got 2 MIDI ins and 2 MIDI outs right here, and then a bunch more around back. And then you have these different input banks. You can switch between which input is going to which output and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. I just don't have that many things hooked up at once. If I had a bigger table and just a whole bunch of stuff plugged into that mixer, I would use it. And then below that, also not using it that much at the moment because I don't have too many things plugged in. This is a Samson S Patch Plus, a 48-point balanced patch bay. So this just easily lets me switch around different 1/4-inch audio things. So right now I have like the Minilogs output that goes into there, and then it comes out here, and then it goes into the input of the reverb module down below here. Okay, moving on down the stack, and let's talk about these 3, starting with this one, the Behringer Ultra Curve Pro Ultra High Performance Digital Audio Processor. Yeah, it does that. But it does a great job of it. It's got the Minilog XD running a pattern through there. Now, I admit I mostly use it for the visualization aspect, just so I can kind of see what I'm doing when I'm shaping noises. I like it, it's handy, and it looks cool. But man, it's got so much more stuff. Like, yeah, for the price, I find this just fantastic. But yeah, like I said, mostly I just like these. And it, I mean, it's handy too. So like if I start shaping the sound a little bit. I've just turned up the, I think this is kind of cool. So I've just got the cutoff all the way open, resonance all the way down, but take a look at this part here, turning the resonance all the way up. You can see that. See, it's all the way down, like you can see exactly where it is. Yeah, I find that awesome to look at, but also handy for when you're trying to get certain sounds in certain ranges and you don't want stuff to overlap, especially when you start adding bass and drums and a lot of things. It starts getting real muddy, and this is one way to take care of that. And if we go over to parametric, like say that there is a range, I don't know, right around here that we don't like, you just do that, or yeah. Okay, obviously you don't want to go that much, but you can. Anyway, moving on down to this lovely thing, the Yamaha Digital Reverberator, the Rev 500. This is another older unit. I think mid-90s, maybe late 90s, I don't know. A little newer than the Roland up there, but yeah, it's just a really capable reverberation unit in one U. I wanted something that wasn't huge and terribly expensive either. So yeah, tons and tons of effects of all kinds. So right now I've got the effects muted on here entirely, and that's what that little pedal up there is for. So if I press that, yeah. Some of these room settings are just ridiculous, how much you can put them up. 99 seconds of reverberation. It's just gonna keep doing that for 99 seconds. And nothing's playing over there anymore. Yeah, I gotta go to the wood room. The sound of wood grain, I guess. Yeah, I got some springs. I do actually have a real spring reverb unit over there from like the late 70s, but I don't use it too much. It's really noisy, needs a little work. Anyway, And we start mixing these with like the delay that's built into some of the other things in here, either like on my mixer or just the ones that are built into the Mini-Log. Let me switch it to something cool. Turn that back on. Yeah, there's so much good stuff you can do with just these two things. I mean, that's that and the Mini-Log with its built-in delay. That's it. And then the final thing in the chain here is this lovely compressor by ART, Applied Research and Technology, the Pro VLA2. I bought it for a couple of reasons. One, it was relatively affordable, and I wanted a compressor. Two, it also has these fantastic VU meters and apparently a tube inside. I don't know, you can't see it, so it doesn't really make too much difference to me. But yeah, mostly just bought it to even out a lot of the stuff that I'm putting through here. And then really compress the crap out of my drums, make them nice and, you know, It also doesn't have any kind of side chaining ability. I wish that it did. That's probably the one reason that I'll end up replacing it at some point, because I love side chaining, and thankfully the TR-8S does have that. If you were to plug something into the external input around back there, you can side chain synths and whatnot, and it sounds good. But I'd rather have it over here so I could have more freedom to do things. But anyway, it's still a really good compressor for the price. And yeah, recommend it. It looks awesome. It's got all sorts of things in terms of visuals that I appreciate as well. And then here at the bottom of the rack, we've got two oscilloscopes, or I guess vector scopes to be more accurate. They look fantastic when they work. Right now, they don't. Don't know what's going on. This one, the input does weird things, and the XY no longer does anything. That's why I got this one. This is a Tektronix 760A stereo audio monitor. And it just doesn't do what it's supposed to at all. And this one, the display is, or I guess the power supply maybe, is doing some weird stuff, and it's just not displaying. Here's what it looks like, though, from some previous videos that I've recorded of this, and it looks great. It's also very useful for you know, just visually getting some feedback in terms of the sounds you're putting through there. I especially wish it still worked. It doesn't right now. I don't know what's going on. And then right here, I've just got a little handy drawer full of crap. Tons of cables and adapters and all sorts of things with some stickers. You gotta have some stickers on your AV junk. And then kind of next to last, before we get to the modular setup, and I got the acid smiley face because this is a Roland TB303 clone. Well, not really a direct clone, more like a modern interpretation built in the same style with the same type of old 303 programming, and that is a fascinating thing to experience, but it gives you that classic sound. But that's just a really dry, nothing going on kind of thing with that. You know, who leaves a 303 dry? You gotta have it wet and squelchy. Give it some reverb over here on the mixer. Okay, that's getting there, but come on now. Distortion. That is something that they've added straight into here so you don't have to mess with external distortion. And well. Give us some drums. like this thing a lot. And I don't use it in a lot of songs. But when you need the sound, there's nothing else like it. Just a fantastic little thing, and a weirdly affordable one, like so many other of this company's products. And just briefly, a few more items before we get to the modular setup and playing around with making some music. This is the Arturia KeyStep, which I enjoy using as a MIDI controller when the need arises. It's got a bunch of nice sequencer and arpeggiation situations going on over here. And yeah, it's just great for controlling things that don't have a keyboard or a sequencer or just, you know, any kind of MIDI stuff. It's got a 16 channel selectable here, but on its own, it doesn't make any sound. You have to connect it to something either through MIDI or through any of the different triggers that it has here. Really, these are more CV outs. So we got modulation, gate, and pitch there, which you can connect to the modular or really anything else that supports it. And synchronization, so clock in and out. If I don't use MIDI to synchronize things, you know, make sure they're in beat with each other, then I'll often be using this instead. So for now, we can just plug in some MIDI output, and we can do that. And that's what that does. Now, what is it plugged into? Well, that is this right here. This is a version of the Samich FM. I say a version of it because it's not the original design. This is something that I found from somebody who was making them, I believe, in Hong Kong, and just putting them together in kits and selling them off that way. But yeah, what's interesting about this is the fact that it uses the same sound chip that was used back in the day on so many different PC sound cards, the OPL3 or YMF262 from Yamaha. So this is used in the AdLib Gold, Sound Blaster Pro 2, Sound Blaster 16, Pro Audio Spectrum 16, and like a billion clones. So, you know, chances are if you heard AdLib music back in the day, you were hearing something in this line or something trying to imitate it through emulation later on, but yes, that classic FM synthy goodness. Yeah, neat little thing. I haven't really delved too deeply into getting FM synthesis, doing weird FM synthy things yet. But there's this and another device I have, we'll get to that here in a sec, that does FM, and it's a lot of fun to play with, but I just don't really know what I'm doing yet. Another fun device that I like messing with this and really any other synth that takes MIDI is the Conductive Labs Noodler. So this is fascinating, man. You got pads, drones, and motifs 1 and 2, and then you can mess around with all sorts of different components here in the mod matrix, and different settings, and clock dividers, and patterns, and it's just got a lot of different things built in here to make things sound more or less musical depending on what you want to do, and different chord progressions and patterns and ranges to screw around with. So we can just start motif number 1 or 2 here. And this is just playing whatever instrument that channel is set to, and give it some reverb. And if we want, we can start changing things around, like we can take it to a triad, or sus4, or a 7th. Yeah. And now we can bring in these others. So motif number 1. And then we've got the pad and drone, which I don't know how this is going to work because I don't know what those are set to over here. You can have it go out to different MIDI instruments and such, but oh, okay. Let's get some kind of a bell sound applied to the pad there. So I guess, yeah, that's the drone, or what it's treating as a drone. Anyway, the better instruments that you give it, the more cool it sounds. Honestly, this does amazing things with a wavetable sound sample based synthesizer. Not so much with something like the Sandwich FM or even the Minilog XD, but plugged into something like a Sound Canvas, I've had a lot of fun with this. So anyway, this is just a thingy that again doesn't make any noise on its own. It just controls other things as an alternative sequencer. And before we get to modular stuff, let's just briefly talk about these couple little guys right here that I've been rather enjoying as well. This is part of Korg's Volca line. So I've got the Volca Sample 2 here, a digital sample sequencer, and the Volca FM, which does frequency modulation goodness in the Yamaha DX style, and kind of in the same style as the Sandwich FM from earlier, but not at the same time, because it uses different analog FM chips to do its thing. I'll go ahead and get them turned on, and they are battery powered, so that is quite convenient. And you can connect them via MIDI, you got clock in and out synchronization. This one now has USB, which is cool, so you can actually load your own samples a little more easily than you could in the original Volca sample. But yeah, this is just, it's a sampler, just going straight back to the 90s, man. I think there's only like 8 megabytes of storage, so you gotta put these little bitty WAV files that have been crunched down, and they're pretty low fidelity, but man, it sounds cool. And I enjoy the limitations, I really, really do. And you got all these knobs to individually mess around with each of these steps, or really they're parts in the case of when you have something going, so. Yeah, so you can change these into whatever you want, and of course mess around with them. Oh yeah, all kinds of good stuff to mess with. You can really fill it up with whatever you want. Whereas this is pure FM synthesis, it's all analog goodness, so lots of classic sounds, a little capacitive touch. These are both capacitive touching, so I kind of like that though. It makes them really easy to just play around with, and you don't have to worry about velocity or anything. Oof. Lots and lots of good sounds. And you can get Yamaha DX patches in there, Yamaha DX7 and whatnot. Make it sound like that too. It's just a really, really enjoyable thing that I don't really understand the full depth of. Because programming FM, oh my goodness, it is a thing. So anyway, I mostly just download my own patches or fiddle around until something kind of sounds good and don't really know what I'm doing yet. But it's neat, and it's got a sequencer. And then you can pair them together as well, which we'll do in a sec. But, you know, just to give you an idea of, you know, this on its own just plays through 16 steps, not a whole lot going on here. Whereas this has individual parts, up to 10 more or less. 9 and 10 sort of cover each other up. And then 16 steps as well here for a pattern. Load my 13 here. I like this one to put together right when I first got it, I think. So yeah, muting, soloing, really easy stuff to just play around and do things in live synths. Yeah, tons of fun to mess around with, but let's connect them together and see what that does. And just a quick example of what you can do with them connected together, I've got the sync out going into the sync in on this one, and then just over to the mixer over here. So Yeah, anyway, have a lot of fun with both of these together, or just on their own. You can do a ton with the Sample 2 and a ton with this, even though, like I said earlier, I'm still learning the whole FM synth programming thing and figuring out what in the world all this does. I can get it to make cool noises, but I don't always know why it's making the noises. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so last but absolutely not least, this is my latest obsession in terms of hardware and music stuff. This is my Eurorack setup, and yeah, it's completely unique. This is something that I put together using all of these individual Eurorack standard modules. Let's go ahead and turn it on. This is in a Rack Brute 6U case by Arturia, but really you can just build your own, doesn't really matter. 6U just refers to the height, so it's got 3U height here, getting 6. That's following just standard audio video rack stuff like we had for the rack back there. A lot of those are 1U units. And then each module is measured in HP in terms of width. I don't know what HP stands for in this case, but it doesn't really matter. You just have a bunch of different modules made by all sorts of different companies, individual creators following the Eurorack standard. And the whole appeal of this is that you get individual modules like this. It's just a bunch of circuitry and cool things going on. And they all use these same ribbon cables. And there's like a strip in the back there that you can just plug these in, and then that connects everything in terms of giving it all power. But they're not connected in any other way, at least not in this case here. The only way to have them communicate with each other at all is by using these patch cables. And these are just effectively 3.5mm mono audio cables. And you can patch them together, and then some of them I have just going out to the mixer from earlier. So I have some analog drums here. And then this one is just a mixer that goes to the mixer. But none of these other things are going to make any noise. Like, it's not going to do anything until you connect it to something with output and then making something trigger the noise or make the oscillator do its thing. And yeah, each of these little modules, they do something different that really you could get in a standard synthesizer. Like the Minilog XD over there, you know, instead of having VCOs and the filters and the sequencer and envelope generator and effects and all that kind of stuff in one unit. Here, you don't get any of that unless you get an individual module to do that. Or you have multi-modules. Some of these do a whole ton of things. Some of them just do one thing. Some of them make noise or, you know, output sound that you can audibly hear and do something with. Like these here, these are oscillators, but a lot of them don't. Some of them are just straight up utilities like amplification and freezing, sample and hold kind of stuff. You got a mult right here to multiply different signals. It's just all electricity and voltages and analog stuff. It's great. I love it. And the logic of it has gotten my mind working. I cannot stop messing with it and sinking all my money into it. I'm going to go bankrupt because of this stupid thing. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's all cool sounding stuff and controlled by voltages. So if we wanted to hear this right here, the BIA module, there we go. That's just the most simple patch to get the output of that in terms of the audio output anyway, plugged into the mixer. I'm not going to go into what every single one of these does. If you're curious about what each of these are, check out my modular grid page. I'll link that. And the description, I could seriously spend like 14 hours going over all this. I mean, like this thing down here, for instance, here's another thing that's really key to all this. Instead of using a traditional keyboard or sequencer, I love using this right here, the Make Noise O Control, or Zero Control, No Control, whatever. It's by Make Noise. They are a local company to me, which is pretty fun. They're them and Moog are here in the Asheville area. And in fact, Make Noise is just down the road from one of my favorite coffee shops. A dangerous and convenient thing for somebody into synths to have these companies nearby. So this has its own clock. It's got a clock in as well, but we're just going to use a clock out, and this is just going to send a little gate pulse. And we're going to send that out to the trigger of this. And there we go. So that's, again, extremely basic in terms of a patch. So it's just being triggered by the No Control and then going out to here. Okay, say we wanted to shape that just a little bit. Well, we can take the output of that and go into the input of the Cinnamon module here, which is just a cutoff and resonance and such, and a low pass filter going output from that into the input. And you notice it got a lot quieter. You can adjust that with this input level, but it'll start doing some weird stuff there with the voltages kind of making it clip and whatnot. And that's where things like the VCAs will come into place. You can really attenuate that and get that in there. It's got an attenuator here. Really, it's just a matter of getting all of these voltages to do what you want, not go too high or too low, or unless you really want to blow them out and make them sound all crazy overdriven, you can do that too. I don't know. Sometimes that's appealing. And something I added pretty recently too is this little, tiny little zero scope oscilloscope. So this is handy for seeing what exactly you're doing. And now we can just sort of see the waveform as we're modifying it. Yeah. And you notice I've turned it off, but it's still doing that, and that's because things are still happening over there. I've just muted the output. So this thing is endless. You can just patch things forever and get all sorts of crazy outputs going. Whatever. Let's go ahead and move on to the last thing, which is just, I don't know, mixing something together, probably a lot with this modular, and let's just get a whole lot more patch cables in there and do some sounds. Okay, I don't know where to start, so I'm just gonna start. I've got a patch going here that I had, you heard a little bit of at the beginning of the video, and I'm not gonna be using everything, only really just a few things. So I got the Mini-Log to do some kind of stuff. And the modular doing most of the work, honestly, right here. I'm not going to be using the TD3 or the Roland TR-8S. I got drums on here, and I got some other lead type things going and bass and whatnot. So, yeah, don't need this. I mean, I could stick them all together and you get a bunch of crazy sounds. And there's a whole ton more sounds on here I could use, but I'm just going to really be using 2 or 3, 4 or 4. I don't know, whatever. Let's just do stuff. Let's fade in some things going on. So, yeah. So that is just this module right here, the Basimilus Iteratus Alter. And it's going through a whole bunch of stuff, but at the moment, the main thing that's affecting it is this filter. And it's just connected to low pass. And a little bit of CV stuff being taken care of by the blend over here on the Chance module. So that's giving it that squelchy kind of sound that I quite enjoy. And if we were to adjust the decay, we'll get a lot more. Yeah. Just these two modules together are way too much fun, but anyway, let's add some daggum drums. I'm gonna turn the volume up here, and I've got the Endorphins Black Noir that I'm using for drums because I just like the way the analog drums sound. So you got like, yeah, good stuff in here. You can of course mess with the sounds a lot. I like the way that sounds. And I mean, there's a million other controls, but we're not gonna use them, so. And this right here is the U-Grids. So it's just a little cut down, kind of smaller module that gives a different chance to run through different drum patterns with just a few different knobs and CV and a bunch of other things. But these 3 main knobs you can control. The way I have it set here is kick, snare, and hi-hats. So, yeah. And if I want to take this and adjust the pattern that the drum is going through,
Yeah, look at that. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna keep that going. And I'll bring on the plaits here because, yeah, just the timbre, really. I mean, it's going in the background. In fact, if I were to just do that, that's what it sounds like, just as it is. But I like fading it in. So yeah, forget I did that. And here's what I like doing with that one, is just there we go. Anyway, I'm already getting lost in this. So what do we want to do here? Could add some different sounds. So I've got this Pamela's New Workout. I like giving different outputs for the different parts of drums. So I love the way this particular part sounds. So yeah, I like those a lot. Let's add just a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, so that's that. I can just kind of do that forever. And that's what I do here. Just screw around with sounds, man. And that's one patch. And if I take these things all apart, I'll never have it again. So it's kind of ethereal. And it's this ever-changing, ever-evolving thing that can disappear in a moment. And I like that. You know, there's something about getting a specific connection going on with everything. And it just comes together in such a way that it's emotional. Like these things feel like they're alive somehow. It's just the beauty of analog and voltages and a little bit of digital stuff tastefully tossed in there. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do with my synth setup. So I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed seeing this kind of jam, then I don't know, check out my LGR Twitter. I post more there. I haven't really done any other main videos on the main channel here like this, but perhaps I will in the future. I don't know. That's just something I like farting around with, and I enjoy and I felt like sharing. As always, thanks for watching.